Shadow of the Erdtree will definitely not go easy on any of us. From new challenges to tougher than ever enemies, it will once again test the limits of our skills as well as our sanity. And with such a long list of new surprises, here's what you can do right now to set yourself up for the best possible start in the new expansion. Also, to celebrate the new launch, I'm doing a giveaway for 2 copies of Shadow of the Erdtree expansion. All you have to do is to be a subscriber, leave a like on the video, and comment down below what's the first thing you're going to be doing as soon as the DLC drops. Winners will be announced very close to launch date. Now, the first steps you should take is to at least follow through until you hit the Mohgwyn Palace and specifically defeat Mohg, Lord of Blood. It's now been pretty much confirmed that accessing Shadow of the Erdtree is done by interacting with an NPC that appears next to Miquella's cocoon found behind him. To that end, it's a good idea to also follow through the White Mask Vare questline, as it both makes reaching Mohgwyn Palace easier, plus it gives you a bunch of very strong items for future bleed builds. So the first phase is to meet Vare at the first step site of Grace, where you can speak to him as soon as you enter Limgrave for the first time. The next phase in his quest only triggers right after you obtain any great rune, meet the Fingers, and spoke to Anya at the Round Table Hold. Upon doing so, Vare will move to his new location at the Rose Church in southwest Liurnia. You'll know he left this for the new location, as he's going to leave behind a message letting you know that he moved. Typically, this happens after you defeated Godric, assuming you follow the typical story path. Once you reach the Rose Church, you'll want to pick the dialogue option "They didn't seem right" when being asked about the 2 fingers. But before you join him in the Order of the Bloody Lord, you'll need to complete 2 tasks for him. For the first one, he gives you 5 festering bloody fingers, which you will need to use to invade other players 3 times. Now, there are a couple of ways in which you can do this, either by using PvP or by using an NPC in the Altus Plateau, but I used the one that also invaded other players. In this case, you don't even have to win the matchups, you can even sever the connection right away and it will still count regardless. But once you're done, you can speak to him again and he'll eventually give you the Lord of Blood's favor. For the second task, this one is to soak the newly acquired Lords of Blood favor in the blood of a maiden. Again, there are a few ways in which you can do this, but the easiest is to use the Dead Maiden back in the very first room you spawned back at the Chapel of Anticipation. This is also needed to get the Stormhawk summon for Nepheli's questline, so you kinda hit 2 birds with 1 stone. For this, you will need to head over to the second Belfry right here at the 4 Belfries region in Liurnia, and then use the imbued sword key that you find in the chest nearby to get back at the starting zone. Once you're here, you can simply use the interact prompt option with the Maiden's corpse inside the chapel to get that item soaked. If you already followed her questline, Nepheli's Stormhawk is at the top of the platform in the same room that you can now access via this flight of stairs that just opened up on your second visit at the chapel. Once this is done, you can simply head back to Vare and go through all of his dialogues, up until you eventually get the Pureblood Knight's Medal. With this item, we can now teleport at any time to the front of the Mohgwyn Palace site of Grace, which eventually leads to the Mohg boss fight that we need to finish to open up the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. However, I suggest you first finish Vare's questline in its entirety, or at the very least until you defeat at least one of the 3 nameless White Mask NPC invaders near the Bloody Lake on this side of the map. Specifically, it's the one right here close to the giant farmable crow near the lake edge. As you descend from the nearby side of Grace, you can simply go through this tunnel exit to your left and eventually he will spawn right in front of you. He's the one that actually drops the White Mask as well as the set, but the White Mask in particular is one of the best items you can get for a bleed build if you want to maximize your damage. But once all 3 invaders have been defeated in the lake area, you can also head over back to the midpoint side of Grace and backtrack a few steps to find the red summoning sign needed to invade Vare's world. And after you defeat him, you can speak to him again, he's going to give you a brand new weapon, and after this point you can freely go ahead and finish Mohg. And that should pretty much resolve all the problems with opening up the area for the new DLC. However, there are a few more things you can still complete in this zone, and specifically, here is where we will find 3 of the best rune farming methods for both mid as well as endgame. Shadow of the Erdtree, by all accounts, seems to be at or even above the level of difficulty we already have in the endgame of Elden Ring, so it's highly recommended you go in with a character that's at least level 100 to 150, maybe even more depending if you feel comfortable or not. Yes, there will be mechanics in Shadow of the Erdtree to mitigate damage while playing the expansion, which is done via special Erdtree fragments that we can then use back at Sites of Grace, similar to the Golden Seeds and the Crimson Tears in the base game. But until then, here's a few ways to farm runes extremely fast and level up your character very early. So starting with the early game, assuming that this is a new character, this is the perfect time to head over and defeat Elden Dragon Greyol right next to Fort Faroth in Caelid. With a gold pickled foul foot, you can easily get 100,000 runes without ever being attacked, which is more than enough to reach at least level 33 very early on. There's actually a way to even farm Greyol on repeat, get the runes and still have the boss completely respawn, but only if you're fast enough to reach the nearby Site of Grace before the boss actually dies. So here's the setup. You can actually go ahead and attack as normal, preferably using bleed items or bleed buffs to bring that HP even lower. Once the boss is low enough but still not yet dead, what I recommend doing is to go ahead and add a damage over time effect, such as for example poison, which works really well against her. This is going to be enough to take her down, but will also give you enough time to run back at the nearby Site of Grace. So apply the poison and then immediately run over back to the Site of Grace. And as soon as you see the HP bar disappear, go ahead and immediately rest. If you do this properly at the right time, you should see all of those runes being credited, but upon going back, you will see that Greyol is once again fully respawned. And you can pretty much do this on repeat until you get a satisfactory enough number of runes to pretty much set yourself up for the mid game. Now, if you want to get even more runes from farms as well as an early poison item, you can actually get both the Gold Scarab and the Venomous Fang to help a ton with this. And you can actually get both of them from the same abandoned cave just a bit north from this location, also in Caelid. So for this, simply follow the collapsed wall until you reach the gap between the current zone and this higher up platform. If you look down and follow the tree branches on the other side, you'll eventually find a small cave opening. Now inside, you will have to navigate the rivers of Scarlet Rot, so either use rot resist items, consumables, or flame cleanse me incantation. The first item is going to be the Poisonous Fang, which you can find in the room with the giant poison flowers right before the boss room, as you're going in, and then jump onto the ledge with the corpse containing the item. For the Golden Scarab, which gives you 20% more runes, you will actually need to defeat the 2 Scarlet Knight bosses at the end of the dungeon. So if you're too weak for now, come back at a later date, but trust me, it's going to be worth it for the end game. But going back at the Mogwin Palace Site of Grace, here you will find 3 more best of the rune farms in the entire game by far. So starting with the first and most accessible, we have the Giant Crow on the opposite side, patrolling the edge of the nearby Lake of Blood. This farm is as old as the game itself, it still works to this day, and all you need to do is to basically shoot it from range and make it drop in the, well, endless pit below. For this, I recommend this very spot right here, and as soon as that arrow hits the target, just move back a little bit so that it overshoots and just drops immediately into the abyss. Do that and you will get easy 10k or even more runes every single time you do it, plus it's very easy to spawn at the nearby Site of Grace and reset the whole thing. The second method is to defeat the large number of Albinorics resting on the path descending from the palace. There are a dozen or so here that will give anywhere between 40 to 60,000 runes every 10 to 20 seconds depending on your build. Now technically, Sacred Relic Sword is the best option here, but that kinda requires you to pretty much finish the game and also defeat the final boss. However, there are many options way before that that can be just as good, so here are a few examples that I've used successfully. For example, one of them is the Dragon Communion incantations, especially Dragon Ice is very useful against these enemies at taking them down quickly. You can also use the Blasphemous Blade, assuming that you're running with a Faith build and have defeated Rykard, or even the Darkmoon Greatsword in case you're running with an Intelligence variant. Also Dragon Cult incantations, Gravity sorceries such as Meteorite of Astel, even Adula's Moonblade and so on. Everything that has large AoE potential can be very good over here. Now, theoretically, there's a third method that still works. However, it kind of feels a bit like cheating, but you can still do it to get 120,000 runes every minute or so. So the setup is again minimal. You will want to just start from the Dynasty Mausoleum entrance and just head northeast to the nearby cliffs. Here, look for the small gap between the walls just a bit to your left. You will know you're at the right place if you see some glowstones on the ground. From this point on, you will simply want to use the small platform walls and the cliff nearby to your left to make your way up. Once you're here, simply head over to the ledge and then make sure you jump far enough from it so that you don't hit anything on the way down. You will know you pull this off properly if you end up falling infinitely. Plus, you will want to use your weapon as you're mounted to just hit the air, and after about 30 seconds to a minute, you should see a batch of runes credited to you. This should amount to about 120,000 runes, which is a lot lower than what it used to be. It used to give you almost a million depending on where you used to be in the game, but not any longer. And with this, you should now have enough levels for everything. From this point on, you will obviously need gear, and the next best thing is you will need weapons, but also ways to upgrade the new ones in the DLC. I'm personally hyped for many of the new options. There are about 8 new weapon categories, including my favorite reverse grip swords that I cannot wait to test. But in the meantime, here's what you need to do to get the best and highest possible upgrades with the least amount of effort, and that is by getting all the smithing and sombersmithing stone on demand at your very own vendor. So yes, you can still farm them for free in the open world. You can also get some of them from EG from 1 to 5, but the best way is to just get the smithing stone miners bell bearings, and in this case there's 9 of them that you need to find. 4 that will unlock the smithing stones 1 to 8, and 5 more that can unlock the sombersmithing stones 1 to 9. So let's go over them. The first batch is going to be smithing stone miners bell bearings, which you can use to upgrade normal weapons to plus 24. So the first one is going to drop from the Crystallian boss at the end of the Realucaria Crystal Tunnel right here in the northwest of Liurnia. You just have to make sure you bring large weapons or anything with plenty of stance damage, which should make quick work of the boss. For the second bell bearing, you will have to head over to the sealed tunnel just south in the capital outskirts near Lane-Dell. From the entrance side of Grace, you will want to keep it to the right side and enter this hidden room to the lower section and then open the chest containing the bell bearing. The third one can be found in a cellar at the Zammer ruins once you hit the mountaintops of the giants. Head over southwest from the nearby side of Grace and then just take the stairs underground. The chest is going to be inside of the room, which will give you the bell bearing number 3. For the fourth and final bell bearing for the smithing stones, you can actually drop this from the Godskin duo boss encounter in Farum Azula inside the Dragon Temple area. Now for the Somberstone Miner's bell bearing, you will need to find the 5 following options. The first bell bearing can be found by defeating the final boss in the Celia Crystal Tunnel in Caelid. You can actually get there manually, or you can use the fake chest at the burnt dragon ruins to teleport there directly. From this point on, you just have to progress further up in the dungeon and then eventually fight the Falling Star Beast boss at the end of it. It's going to be tricky at first, but you will get the bell bearing level 1, which gives Somberstone 1 and 2 options at the vendor. The second bell bearing is found in the Altus Tunnel in the Altus Plateau by defeating the 2 duo Crystallian boss encounters at the end of the dungeon. Again, use the same tactic as the other Crystallian encounter to more easily defeat them. This unlocks buying of Somberstone 3 at the Twin Maiden Husks. The third one is very easy, which is the bell bearing 3. You can find this on the corpse right in front of the first Church of Marika in the mountaintops of the giants. Meanwhile, for the fourth and fifth ones, you can actually get both of them from Farum Azula. So the fourth bell bearing is found again on a corpse just in front of the Tempest facing balcony side of Grace right here on this side of the map. The fifth and final one is at the bottom before the Besides the Great Bridge waypoint. You unlock this via the path from the Dragon Temple altar and eventually Temple rooftop side of Grace past the nearby dragon boss. Then heading up north until you reach this building with the altar inside, and then the fifth bell bearing is going to be right in front of it. And now that you have all the bell bearings for both the normal and the Sombersmithing stones, you can just head over to the Twin Maiden Husk over at the Round Table Hold, give them in, and now you can pretty much buy all of them to upgrade any weapon from 1 to 24, or in the case of the special weapons, from 1 to +10, which is going to be of tremendous help, especially if you are sick of searching for ones manually in the open world or just want to better prepare and upgrade some of the new gear in the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion. But let's move on to number 5. Even some of the starting zones in Shadow of the Erdtree might be more difficult than the strongest in the endgame right now. So for the next step, it won't hurt to get a strong summon up and ready and also get it to +10. Now personally, I went with the Black Knife Tish since it's the strongest one by far. So to get the Black Knife Tish summon, you're going to have to complete one of the most difficult challenges in the entire game. You both need to complete the entire Rune questline, which also means progressing far enough into the main story, specifically until you at least beat Radahn, and then defeat the Black Knife boss near the Moonlight Altar, which you can only access at the end of Rune's questline. So for this, you will just need to head over to the Ringleader's Everjail on the left side of this area right here once you go at the Moonlight Altar and open that via the Rune questline. Now the boss will be difficult, but with plenty of openings between its strongest attacks to also attack it or heal up. Once you get it, this is one of the best options that can literally carry you. It moves a lot, dodges a lot, it barely ever dies, and it also deals tons of damage. Similar to any Black Knife attack, it burns through enemies' HP for good. So you can actually make this even stronger if you upgrade this to +10, but for that, you will need Ghost Glove Wards. Also, make absolutely sure that you progressed enough into Roderika's questline until she actually starts upgrading your summons, which is actually very easy and can be done very early by just talking to her and the blacksmith at the round table hold until she becomes one. Now, if you want to upgrade this summon, you can actually follow a couple of routes. You can use Ghost Glove Wards by finding them manually. However, we can once again unlock their specific bell bearings and then make the process easier, so we can just buy them outright from the Twin Maiden Husk. So here are the 3 bell bearings that you need to unlock this at the vendor. The first bell bearing can be found as soon as you reach Nokron Eternal City, which you access via the Starfall crater formed after defeating Radahn. As soon as you enter Nokron, you should see the first bell bearing next to the gazebo at the center of the area. For the second bell bearing, you're going to want to head over to Nokstella Eternal City, which is going to be a bit further away. As you make your way up the nearby stairs, at the top, make absolutely sure you take it directly to left and then backtrack a little bit until you see this room filled with silver tears. If you go in the back of it, there's going to be a chest containing the second bell bearing. Third and final one is going to be once you reach the Erdtree, and more specifically at the nearby graveyard right here. So what you can do is to use the drainage channel set of grace, which is the one that I used, and then just take it by these 3 branches to your left to circle back to the nearby church. From this point on, you will see there's an opening in the rooftop, so make your way down 1 platform and then down again to the main floor, aiming towards the exit. From this point on, simply go around the graveyard to the northwest and drop down 1 platform to the graveyard below. You will find the bell bearing in the middle, surrounded by a bunch of enemies. Now that this is done, you can just head over with the bell bearings at the Twin Maiden Husk, give them all 3, and they should open up the possibility to purchase the Ghost Glove Ward from her +1 to +9. But now that we're done with the weapons, it's also time to go over some armor sets. And this is maybe also the appropriate time to tell you should probably focus, or at least start focusing, towards a build, as you're going to want to go with something very strong in the new DLC. I'm going to follow up with some other videos really soon on that, but in the meantime, here are a few quick options I recommend for different types of setups. So for intelligence users, Rune and Selen's questlines both give you 3 of the best armor sets for spellcasters. 4 if you take into account that Roger also has one and he has a small interaction with Rune's questline early on, so you can actually buff different schools of magic depending on your choice. This will also be a longer questline, branching into other characters on questlines, including Blythe, Sulvis, even Nephali, and Dung-Eater. So before finishing Rune's questline, make absolutely sure you are also first done with Sulvis' questline, and specifically before you give her the Fingerslayer blade. Now for bleed builds / occult builds, you can go with the White Mask plus Raptor set. This is especially if you're making use of double sword or double twin blades jump bleed attacks. to gain more damage on each attack. But Raptor chest piece also goes with jump heavy strength builds too if you want to build something like that. You can actually get the entire set from Sage's Cave. You just need to look out for the hidden walls and get the set from the dozen or so chests scattered all around. Plus the white mask that we got from Vari, we just covered this before. You can also get the Knight Cavalry set. Now this is more of a heavy variant that I mostly get for the looks, but it's one of my favorites, so I thought it's worth mentioning. You actually get it from the Knight Cavalry right here in the mountaintops of the giants, but you do have to fight with both of the bosses at the same time and defeat them. But it's a good protection with a decent amount of weight, so it's one of my favorite for that reason. Otherwise, if you're looking for the highest poise armor possible and get no flinches and almost no interrupts, look for the Bull Goat armor. So you actually get this via the Patches questline, especially once you hit Volcano Manor. You will get a letter from him to take down Great Horned Thraggoth back at the ruin-strewn precipice overlook. So simply go ahead, defeat that invasion, and you're going to eventually get this right away. Now there's also lots of poisonous enemies in Shadow of the Erdtree early on, and you can actually get the mushroom set, as this provides some of the highest immunity for that, as well as basically everything else. So you can find the mushroom crown at the top of the ruins back at the Lake of Rot. You'll have to raise the platforms and go to the left side until you navigate the Scarlet Rot to some of the nearby ruins. You can grab then the crown by just making your way up the set of ruins and then jump on the first pillar. The rest of the set can simply be found in the Seethed Water Cave back inside a cavern with lots of poisonous flowers. Obviously, you can't finish a build if you don't have enough talisman slots, so the next bit I recommend is to focus on grabbing all the talisman pouches, which means you have to follow the main story for a little bit. So the first one actually drops from Margit at the Stormveil Castle the first time you defeat it, so that's actually pretty straightforward. The second pouch is given to you as soon as you get to Great Runes and talk to Enya at the Round Table Hold. So if you follow the normal path, defeating Godric and Renala will suffice, but you can pretty much do any combination of two Great Runes. And the third and final one is going to be given to you once you defeat Godfrey the Golden Shade back at the Royal Capital. That's all you need to do and you're now pretty much set. Now, if you're planning to also complete all side quests in the game, which include no less than 32 characters, many of them interconnected, then as far as I know, here are some of the limitations that you should be careful about, because some of them can prematurely end quests. Of course, you are free to add anything that's more specific in the comments down below for future reference. But for example, giving Ranni the Fingerslayer dagger too soon can prematurely end Selva's questline if you did not finish it first, which makes you inaccessible to grab the magic scorpion charm and possibly some of the puppets from him too. Also, killing Rykard too soon is going to end some of the Volcano Manor quests and even interactions, including for Rhea, Tanith, even Bernal and Patches if you didn't finish their quests or progressed enough in them by that point. And finally, killing Maliketh, this is going to remove access to the Royal Capital, so you, again, lose access to a ton of items if you didn't grab them, plus it's going to open up the Ashen Capital instead. Also, make sure you at least finish every single step available up until this point for Corin's questline, which only has one step after you defeat Maliketh, so that means you have to do everything up until the mountaintops of the giants with him. And obviously the same goes for Dung Eater and Nefeli. You should definitely complete their questline before going in and taking down Maliketh. Moving on to number 8, we talked about all of this. Now you might want to upgrade your gear, but even more so, change their affinities. For that, you will need Whetblades. So let's get started with the most important ones and also some adjacent. First one is going to be the Whetstone Knife, which you'll find right here first at the Gatefront Ruins. There's going to be a path downwards inside the cellar in the center of the camp, which you will then open up and find the knife inside of a chest. The next one is the Iron Whetblade, which unlocks heavy, keen, and quality affinities. You will actually find this at the Stormveil Castle, but going past the Grafted Scion, and then using a stone sword key on the imp statue to open up the doorway ahead, which is going to give you access to a path with a chest inside of it. For all mages or anybody who wants to imbue with magic or cold affinities, you will want the Glintstone Whetblade. You will find this at the Rea Lucaria Academy by starting at the Debate Parlor. Simply go past the fountain and then keep it to the left, going up this collapsed set of stairs. Then you will find a corpse hanging onto the right side balcony instead of this room right in front of you. For poison, blood, and occult affinities, you're going to need the black Whetblade, the next one that's very important. So you will find this in Nokron Eternal City. You just need to head towards Night's Sacred Ground and you should find a corpse in front of the large altar holding the item. The next one is the Sanctified Whetblade for lightning and sacred affinities, and you will find this at the Fortified Manor in Leyndell. From the West Capital Rampart site of Grace, just follow this path and then enter inside of the area by simply using the roof onto the right side. And finally, for fire or flame art affinities, you can just get the Red Hot Whetblade, which you will find at the Redmane Castle. So simply start from the chamber outside the plaza side of Grace and then head out this door past the flame-throwing enemies. You're going to follow up this path up until the next building and there's going to be a Whetblade inside of it on the first floor. And with this, there's only one more major step left, and that is to get some empty Ashes of War. Now, theoretically, I'm not sure if there's any new Ashes of War added specifically in the DLC, but even if there aren't, maybe you will need some for some of the new weapons in case you want to dual wield them, like for example have dual seppukus. So in that case, here are a few options very early on. You can actually buy two relatively early. One, you can do so from the isolated merchant right here in the Weeping Peninsula. Another merchant can be found at the end of the bridge from the main academy gate at the Real Lucaria Academy. You simply have to go opposite of the normal lift entrance that you normally take to enter the academy, and you will find it right here on the right side. Now, technically, there are a few bonus things you can do in no particular order that can still help quite a bit in the new DLC. One of them is to upgrade your potions, so you will definitely want to hunt for all the secret tiers and all of those golden seeds to both increase the number of potions and their potency along the way. Try to get to at least plus 10 for both of them. Besides this, also get the Flask of Wondrous Physic. You can actually get that flask from the 3rd Church of Marika very early in the game and it will help a ton. And from this point on, you can just get the crystal tiers depending on what you build towards. For example, if you're going again with intelligence builds, you can definitely go with the Cerulean hidden tier to eliminate FP consumption, which you do by destroying the ulcerated tree spirit right here very close to Volcano Manor. But you can also go with other crystal tiers that can boost up stamina, strength, dexterity, or even the ones early on that just restore HP. And theoretically, this should bring you very close to having the perfect character for the DLC and get ready to absolutely get blasted, because let's be honest, no amount of preparation can get us ready for what From Software has in store for us. Still, I cannot wait for the challenge. I cannot wait to fail as many times as it takes to master the expansion as well. In the meantime, let me know down below in the comments what type of preparations are you making for the new DLC. And even more